The information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, D.C., interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription.
Hey guys, got another great program for you. It's Dr. Tom. You're listening to Ageless Health Livestream, and we're going to talk about some things that are ignored. And today we're going to kind of focus on one of the triggering mechanisms of migraine headaches. And a lot of you don't realize where they come from. They're usually toxic inflammatory reactions. Second, they're vertebrae. Upper cervical spine means the upper part of your neck that are not in the position that they're supposed to be in. But we're going to talk about that. And I follow through is on the 20th of this month, 20th of August. I want to invite you to the Roselle Center for Healing in Fairfax. 6 p.m., Dr. Qinglong Zhang and I will be going over what really happens when your gut's a mess and the symptoms, if you will, that show up because of it. It can be pain anywhere. But today I want to focus on something that's really critical, really important, and that's that unrelenting migraine that you get, whether it's one-sided, it's full scope all over the head, and what the patterns are. But your gut, when it's all plugged up, can cause your head to explode. And you start treating the migraine and you give all kinds of anti-pain medications and so forth. And for whatever reason, it just never goes away. Well, we're going to talk about one of the reasons why it won't go away and what you can do about it. But more importantly, join us on the 20th because I want to give you very specific step-by-step how to evaluate it, what the problems are, and so forth. So let's kind of get into this a little bit. Let's talk about those migraines. Let's talk about where they come from, what takes place, and so forth. So a migraine, if you will, a migraine can come from an irritable bowel. So put that away first. A migraine, an intractable migraine, something that doesn't go away, that's always reoccurring, can come from irritable bowel. But by the way, it can go both ways. You can have a migraine from neurological problems that can cause the bowel, if you will, to be a problem. So it can go back and forth. So if you have an irritable bowel, if you're constipated, if you're tied up, it's important that you understand that it may be a back and forth situation. So one condition that you experience on a regular basis, you're much more likely to experience the other one. So let's talk about what that really means and let's bring it together. Migraines, for example, let's define that. It's a neurological problem and it's characterized by extremely intense headaches. And it can be accompanied by twinkle, twinkle, little star, a prodromal is what they call it. Nausea, you feel like you want to vomit. Sometimes you will vomit. You have sensitivity to light. You can't look at anything that's too bright. Sound can be effective. God forbid you're in fluorescent lights because it's a problematic. It can affect 12 to 15% of the general population. That's a whole lot of people. That's somewhere in the neighborhood in this country up to 50 million people. I don't know about you, but I don't want to suffer with migraines. So let's talk about what really can be done. And here's the hand in glove, right? A bowel problem, an irritable bowel, whether it's constipation or diarrhea, but a constipation problem with bloating, distension, and pain and so forth affects somewhere up to, guess what, 15% of the people globally. Interesting correlation. Now, what does that got to do with anything? So let's talk about the bidirectional situation. Remember I said migraines can have gastrointestinal problems. Gastrointestinal problems can produce migraines. An individual with a migraine headache that continues to have migraines are over 4%. I think the actual number is 4.25 times more likely to develop a problem with the intestinal tract than those that don't have migraines. That's craziness. The other way around is that people who have gut problems have over 60% higher risk, 60% of developing migraines. So if that's the deal, it's like, wow, we really have to look into this a little differently because those of you who got bad guts are going to have bad bad headaches potentially. So we want to clean this up. And we're not just talking a gentle contraction headache, my head's dull, I got soreness behind my neck, but we're talking about migraine straight up. I've been looking at these type of problems for in excess of almost 5 decades now. We're coming up under that top end of it. I know it's crazy. I've been around since my grandchildren will tell you that dinosaurs ruled the earth. But we have to look at the mechanism and what really causes it, right? So the first thing that we're going to explore is something called the gut-brain axis. And that's a complex neurological network of all kinds of things, from amino acids to neurotransmitters that play back and forth between the gastrointestinal tract and the central nervous system, meaning brain, spinal cord, and then its connections every place else. When it's not regulated, we'll call it dysregulation, big term, so it's not regulated, and it can increase the heightened sensitivity and pain perception. So when this gut-brain axis is not working the way it's supposed to, any kind of pain is going to be much more problematic. So what are the biggest keys to this? We mentioned something called neurotransmitters. Well, one of the major players is something called serotonin. It's one of the key players in all kinds of problems, particularly in migraines and irritable bowel problems. When you get abnormal levels of serotonin, it can affect the way your intestinal tract moves, and it can affect pain perception. So if your serotonin level is too low, your gut's not going to work. If it's too high, it can work maybe too much. So we have to look at those contributing pieces. Now, how do you measure it? You have to go in and do a biopsy of your skin. No, the actual way that we do it in the office is doing urinary neurotransmitter perceptions, and we can test it through neuromuscle function response testing. If you're stressed out all the time and you're really anxious about all things, stress, if you know what that really is, and unfortunately in our world many people do, exacerbates both conditions, migraines and irritable bowel situations. Now, individuals, people, all of us that have one or more experiences that show up that we know we can finger point and says the stress is causing me all of these conditions. I don't feel good. Well, stand back, folks, because you're going to end up with other challenges that you really don't want to deal with. So we have to learn how to manage these things. We have to understand what the triggers are. We have to know what foods, if you will cause the problem. We have to know how to manage this overriding stress and depressive patterns. We have to understand which approach is going to be the best for us to take. So I really want you to understand that migraines just don't happen, and gastrointestinal problems just don't happen. You can have a genetic predisposition to anything. My mother, my aunt, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and so forth, all had predispositions to these things. So if that's the case, are you stuck with it? The short answer is no, you're not. You have to identify it, and then you have to begin to mess with it. And what I mean, mess with it, is simply this. We have this platform around us. It's called epigenetics. That means our environmental impact on a lot of different things that affect our health, our capacities, our ability to achieve, and so forth. Just because great granddad had X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that you're stuck with it. It just means you have to understand where it's coming from, and that you may have a bigger trigger than somebody else, and then change the environmental problems that may be associated with it. I just had a patient today that came in and said she has a kidney stone. Well, she has pain back here in her flank, and it's in deep, and that's one of the characteristics of having a kidney stone. And she's had past, if you will, episodes with kidney stones that's driven her into the hospital. But when she came in, and she was very painful into her side of her body, and just touching the area near the kidney was very, very problematic for her. So I checked her acupuncture pulses, and I said, doesn't make sense. I should feel the acupuncture pulse. If it's chronic, being depleted, or if it's acute, should be really irritated. And it wasn't there. And then I looked at her eyes, and I looked at her body posture. Remember, in my world, in the world of applied kinesiology, every muscle has an organ system. So what did we do? I started checking muscles, and she had one of the muscles directly associated with the intestinal system that wasn't responding the way it's supposed to. So I went to reflexes, and sure enough, it's showing that there's association here with this pain pattern and what was going on. So what did we do? So I started checking her for different substances, foods, and things of that nature, and spinal levels that are related to that. And what she finally told me, she said, the other night I had this casserole. I said, what was in it? She said, well, I had this beef and these vegetables. I said, what else do you have? She said, well, there's noodles in it. I said, you seem to be testing sensitive to the gluten. She says, what? I said, yeah. I said, what else? And she went on and told me she had these burritos and she had this over the last couple of days. So that's why her intestinal tract was flared, which triggered that pain pattern. Now, when she first came into me, she had headaches and we were able to control it, but she decided to go off the wagon a little bit. And what happened was it related to the back pain, but I can guarantee her that if it didn't stop now, meaning her cheating what she was doing, that this whole pattern would come back to her. Just remember something. The food in this good old United States of America is not the foods that we should be eating necessarily. They're different. The gluten concentrations are really high. They're genetically modified to be that way. So they're going to trigger patterns. And when you have an irritable bowel, it's going to refer back into different areas. And then it's going to cascade because of the swelling, the inflammation, and it's going to affect the different portions of the brain. That's where the pain pattern, that's where the migraine comes in. So if we know that we're going to trigger a migraine, why would we do that? Why would we even take the chance of walking down that path? I mean, are we so addicted that we don't love ourselves enough that we kind of set it aside? But remember that gut-brain interaction, that digestive gut-brain interaction, can cause something called a functional irritable bowel problem with constipation and bloating and irritation and so forth. But it also then reflexes, remember what I said, back to the head because of swelling, because of inflammation, because of imbalances and other things. And now you got a catch-22. One's going to feed the other. So there's a way of fixing this. There's a way of stopping the cycle. Remember I said it could go either way? So if you have an injury to your head, it can affect the bowel. So watch my face right now. I'm going to kind of point to different areas. There are acupuncture points that are associated with the head, and we call them B and E points, beginning and end points. And they're coupled. Remember, positive, negative, yin, yang patterns? Okay, so here's the deal. Right here, what's this? This is large intestine end point. Right here on the side, in this area, that's small intestine end point. Right here on the cheekbone is stomach 1. So small intestine, what? Heart. Large intestine, lung. Stomach, spleen, and so forth. So if we have an irritation in the gut, small intestine or large intestine, it could potentially affect anything that will cause a headache or problem. So we have to make sure, that we understand the mechanism. We have to understand where it's coming from, what the situation is, and then begin to deal with that. So we know that there's a very distinct relationship between migraines and bowel problems, migraines and constipation, migraines and bloating and so forth. Remember, we talked about the serotonin pathway. That's one. There's another neurotransmitter that we're talking about. It's called glutamate. Glutamate is a transmitter that is intimately involved in migraine and pathophysiology, including, depression and, if you will, central sensitization. And when that happens, that means when I say central sensitization, that means that all kinds of things within the nervous system are hypersensitive. So little things will trigger big things called migraines, one of them. And then we look at something called the hypothalamic pituitary axis or the adrenal axis. That's called the HPA axis. And this irritation, okay, pituitary in the brain, adrenal system sitting on top of the kidneys, And this little guy about the size of a pea, the hypothalamus, can cause an overactivity, causing the irritable bowel, or can shut it down, causing abnormal hormonal triggering. So it's important when you have any one of these things that you understand where it's coming from. And if you understand it, you can fix it. Inflammation, if we know, causing inflammatory reactions to the nervous system, it's swollen, it's irritated, it hurts, but it can also cause the irritable bowel problem from the gut-brain pathway. So if you have a gut problem, you can have migraines. If you have migraines due to other things, it can be problematic to both ends. So we have to make sure that we check it out, that we understand where it's all coming from. We have to understand that there's things that take place. I'll give you a couple things that will work right now that we see all the time. So you have to desensitize the body. You got to relieve the stress. How about starting to get some exercise, if you will? How about, doing some yoga? How about some meditation? How some prayer? Any of those things will calm that system down. Peppermint oil is one of the most effective things that you can do relative to calming the system using chiropractic adjustment. Did you know the upper portion of the neck, the cervical spine, if it's aligned properly, the body calms itself down? Two reasons, big reasons. One, you have a long nerve, the longest in the body, called, and you've heard me talk about it, the vagus nerve, that affects all this pathway, and it can cause the bowel. But if the skull, the upper cervical spine is out of alignment, it can cause reflexive patterns and pressure and irritation and inflammatory reactions everywhere, and including the brain itself. The other piece that we have to be aware of is that the brain stem comes down right in this area, and if it's irritated, you're in fight flight all the time. If you get those vertebrae to line up properly and take the stress off, all of a sudden the body goes and it relaxes tremendously. So if you join us on the 20th, I'm going to go over all that with you. And Dr. Zhang is going to show you what's going to happen. And I promise you, you're going to go away with the ability to make a difference. In the meantime, try to relax a little bit. In the meantime, try to chill. Use a little peppermint. Have a cup of peppermint tea. Get away from the talking heads. But start eating the way that you're supposed to. If you do that, you'll be amazed of how quickly things can turn around. But join me. And I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to answer your questions. And all you got to do to register for the class is go to drtomroselle.com, register there, or simply, real simple, old-fashioned way, 703-698-7117. That's 703-698-7117. And we'll get into that on a very specific basis. We'll answer your questions. We'll show you what you can do about it. But don't suffer with migraines. You don't have to do that. If there's injury patterns to the skull, if there's an imbalance in the neurotransmitters, if the gut is reflexing to the head because of poisons and inflammatory reactions, and you knew you could get rid of it, wouldn't it be better than having to take meds the rest of your life? Wouldn't it be great to get your life back? Wouldn't it be important to be able to take control of your own life instead of saying something, well, you got to be on this medication the rest of your life? If you're constipated, hormonal migraines can happen. That means because it's going to affect your liver. Your liver doesn't work the way it's supposed to. You have this inflammatory reaction to the head. It can go the other way, as we talked about. So join me. I promise you, I'll give you information that will make a huge difference and be able to turn this around. Remember, I'm here on an ongoing basis. One reason only is that I love you all. And don't forget to follow me and watch me on all social media sites. If you're not following me, make sure that you do. I'm everywhere. And listen to me just before this program on Sundays on WMAL 105.9 in the Washington metropolitan area. So you can catch me twice. And all the programs are available on drtomroselle.com. And you go to the toolbar, you're going to see podcasts and live stream, and they're all there for your listening. So make sure you get it done. I'll see you on the 20th. Don't forget, register right now. Don't waste any time. We'd love to have you as our guest. I'll see you then. Take care.